Do you believe that Trump really evades meeting with Putin to end war in Ukraine?
I don't believe that they have, both of them have a plans to meet one with other. They wish to meet, but this is different things. Yeah, like President-elect Donald Trump, he is ready to meet with Putin to discuss his own plan, the plan of Mr. Trump, which was prepared by Kit Kellogg. And part of this plan was published in Twitter or in other media. But Mr. Putin is not ready to discuss this Mr. Trump plan. Mr. Putin, he wants, as a starting point, his own plan, so-called plan, because this is not exactly peace plan, but rather ultimatum towards Ukraine. And Mr. Putin has the list of wishes, of Russian wishes, like you should withdraw your troops from half of Ukraine, for example, from your cities and evacuate your huge cities and dismiss your wish for NATO from your constitution, for example, and to stop sanctions against Russia. And this is very long list. To cut your army, for example. So this is two different starting points. Starting point of Mr. Trump and starting point of Mr. Putin. And this is not something the compromise is real. That is first. Second, Mr. Trump wants this meeting, but as he is one of ultimate world leader, absolute world leader, Mr. Trump, and Putin, he is just the president of one of another countries, let's say, one of a long list of another countries. So the starting point for the discussion should be Mr. Trump's starting plan. That's it. So it looks now unbelievable that there is a ground for this meeting. And by the way, in Kremlin, speaker of Mr. Putin, Mr. Peskov, he said that we don't see now any common ground for this meeting. We are ready to meet, but we don't see any common ground. And it is very difficult to find this common ground. So this meeting needs a lot of preparation by Mr. Trump's team, and especially by Kit Kellogg, the special envoy of Mr. Trump for Ukraine and Russia.
Michael, yes, as you said, and as reported by Russian state agency TASS, Dmitry Peskov, Kremlin spokesperson, stated that there has been no real momentum so far in response to a question on whether a meeting could take place before Trump's inauguration or if there are no specifics or conditions yet for in-person talks. Also about another meeting about Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico. He visited Moscow to meet with Russian President terrorist Vladimir Putin, and President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky reacted saying Russia is paid for such meetings with sovereignty or shadow schemes. Zelensky noted that neither Fico nor Putin disclosed the details of their meeting in Moscow. This is because they simply cannot say anything about what they discussed at the meeting. They are probably afraid of the public reaction. What's Fico's key goal with Russia now? How do you think?
No, we're not afraid because Mr. Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, he won an election with the ideas of being close friends with Russia and to continue business with Russia as usual. It was the ideas of Mr. Fico. And he's proud to meet with Mr. Putin. And he himself published some selfie with Mr. Putin in his social networks, I mean Robert Fico. So for Robert Fico, it is still a big deal to meet with great leader, Mr. Putin. Before a full-scale war between Ukraine and Russia, meeting with Mr. Putin, it was really something which has a prestige for small countries like Slovakia. And a lot of world leaders of small countries, we used these meetings like to say, okay, you see, I'm in the same league like Mr. Putin. I could bring just the well-known example of Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who used in his election campaign pictures of himself with Mr. Putin. And the motto was Benjamin Netanyahu is Premier League. So that meant that if Putin meets you, so you are from Premier League, and Mr. Putin is also from Premier League. But Robert Fico, he didn't pay attention that situation just changed. And the political field has changed, the geopolitical field. And now Mr. Putin is not one of world leaders, not the Premier League. Now Mr. Putin is, how to say that, he is one of rather losers, world losers league, not the world strongman league. And outcast, that's a good word is outcast. He's from outcast league, together with some Cuba, for example, leaders, or Nicaragua, or Equatorial Guinea. So this is the list of people who meets with Mr. Putin. And Russia, I heard that Mr. Zelensky said that it pays with sovereignty, but really Russia pays money for these meetings. For example, really, they pay the money to world leaders to meet Mr. Putin. I mean, to leaders of small countries, because they want to make the picture like, okay, the business as usual. Yeah, this meeting, just the meeting which was yesterday, had also some concrete goal, not only just for image and just for the picture, but concrete goal is to discuss supply of gas, of Russian natural gas, to Slovakia and to Europe. As we know, as everybody knows, that Russian supply of gas almost cut towards Europe. It was cut by pipelines, and it was almost cut by other measures. But the only pipeline which worked, it was the pipeline which goes through Ukraine and afterwards to Slovakia to Europe. And from January 1st, Ukraine stops this pipeline because the agreement is just finished, the agreement between Russia and Ukraine. So Ukraine didn't stop that before because European partners, they asked not to stop this agreement. But now there is no reason to prolong this agreement between Russia and Ukraine. And Mr. Fico, he wants that. And he came to Russia, and then he came back. He said, Mr. Putin said me that he is ready to sell Russian gas to Europe. And the Slovakian prime minister waited for applause. Wow, great. You brought us the great news. Mr. Putin is ready to sell his gas to Europe. But all Western Europe and most of Eastern Europe, they just are not ready to buy cheap Russian gas or not cheap Russian gas because of political reason. And only a couple of countries, Slovakia, Hungary, and maybe Serbia, which is not part of European Union, they are ready to buy Russian gas now. So he didn't hear any applause for his news from Moscow.
Michael, also I see that a protest took place in front of the Slovak government building in Bratislava on Monday in response to Prime Minister Robert Fico's trip to Moscow, where he met with Russian leader Vladimir Putin with terrorists. Reported by Slovak publication Actuality. And about details, the protest called Enough of Russia was organized by the public association Peace for Ukraine in response to Fico's meeting with Putin in the Kremlin. The organizers said Sunday's meeting between the Slovak Prime Minister and Putin strengthened Russian influence and promotes cooperation with Russia through the issue of gas transit, as you said. At the protest, the crowd shouted traitor at Fico and also former prime ministers and also Eduard Heger, as well as opposition leaders, artists and Ukrainian refugees attended the protest. How do you think these protests, can these protests affect anything or nothing?
Like each protest in democratic state, because Slovakia is democratic state still. It's absolutely democratic state. And Robert Fico is democratically elected leader of Slovakia. And he's not dictator. And he was just elected last year or in 2022, in 2023. So he has an opposition in his country. He doesn't have 100% of support in his country. He has 50+% of support. And this is not only his party. His party, as I remember, they collected something like 30+% in election, but he has a coalition, etc., etc., etc. So he needs all the democratic procedure for all of his moves. So he is not very free in his moves. He can, for example, till now, Slovakia helps Ukraine in this war. At the beginning of the war, Slovakia supplied Slovakian weapon. But with Mr. Fico, Slovakia stopped to supply Slovakian weapon. But Slovakia is used as a logistics center for Western weapon. And Western weapon is supplied towards Ukraine through Slovakia. And Slovakia also, as a EU member, pays its own share in all European support to Ukraine. So Slovakia is a very important partner of Ukraine. So each time then President Zelensky says anything about Mr. Fico, he also says, but it is not about Slovakian nation. It is only about Mr. Fico, one person. So yes, it is democratic procedure, and all of these protests could find some result in Slovakian parliament, for example, and Slovakian parliament vote for each question about financial aid to Ukraine or something like that, or about new agreement about gas. I just don't know who exactly the owner of pipelines in Slovakia, gas pipelines. So I can't say this is private owned or state owned, or this is private public partnership. So I just can't say who should sign this new agreement with Russia. And does Mr. Fico has any proxy to sign this, or he needs, for example, support of parliament? So yes, this protest could be part of parliamentary war against new agreement about gas with Russia.
Michael, also the Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko announced his upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and a visit to China, as he hosted a meeting on the development of mechanical engineering in Belarus. Belta has learned what might be the purpose of the visit, if we talk about Putin, Russia, and also if we talk about China.
Putin, Russia, it is very easy because they meet once a month, approximately once a month. They have meetings. Mr. Putin and Mr. Lukashenko, they are two leaders of this outcast union. I mean, if Mr. Putin is the great political outcast in the world, okay, we could compare just with Iranian government. So Mr. Lukashenko is a small outcast, which is small partner of big outcast of Mr. Putin. So they have everything in common. They together started this war, because the full-scale war started not only from Russian territory, but also from Belarusian territory. So Belarus is the participant of this war. And till now, Russians, they use Belarus territory for production of weapons, for production of shells, and we use Belarusian hospitals for their casualties, and they use a lot. And in Belarus, they manufacture some uniform for Russian units, for Russian military units. So Mr. Lukashenko, he is absolutely partner of Mr. Putin in this war. So we have really a lot to discuss each month. Regarding the visit to China, it is absolutely another story. Before full-scale war started, Belarus was very important partner of China, very important partner. It was probably the closest partner of China in Europe. They used Belarusian territory as a logistic hub for all the goods they supplied to Europe by train, not by sea, because Belarus, they don't have any sea, they are landlocked, but the train way towards Europe was crossed all the Belarus. And in Belarus, Chinese organization and Chinese government, they opened the biggest manufacturing hub, which is called the Big Stone or something like that. This is around Minsk. And we have thousands of companies, Chinese companies, who produces their goods for Europe. and they brought there hundreds of thousands of Chinese workers. So Belarus was a huge partner. Now Belarus is also important partner for China, but not so big because of these problems of war, and this logistic became to be very expensive and very complicated, the logistic through Belarus. But still now, Chinese government, they use Belarusian territory as a hub of Chinese goods and Chinese manufacturing towards the European Union. So they have a lot of business relationship and an economical relationship. And I believe that China is the second biggest partner of Belarus after Russia.
Michael, I also remember that Dmitry Medvedev, former president of Russia and deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on 12th of December. During the talks, the Russian delegation once again voiced its ultimatum demands to Ukraine, with China providing a platform for their dissemination and also under the guise of advocating for peace. How do you think in this situation, can Lukashenko convey something from Putin and give something to Xi Jinping, for example, from Putin?
No, it doesn't look like, because Mr. Lukashenko is too small figure in politics, and I believe that for very important questions, Putin can fly himself to Mr. Xi, and for less important question, he could send his employees or just call to Mr. Xi or to his assistants. No, Mr. Lukashenko, he has his own program, and he has his own, his own interest in China. We are rather competitors in China. I mean, Putin and Lukashenko, who are partners in this war against Ukraine, but we are competitors inside China, because China could choose to produce goods inside Russia or to produce the goods inside Belarus, to choose to send the goods to Europe through Russian harbors or through Belarusian railways. Sorry. So they are competitors, economical competitors in this case.
Michael, we heard interesting thing by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. He has said that sometimes the harsh criticism of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is unjustified. Rutte believes that what Scholz has done for Ukraine is impressive. And he said, I have often told Zelensky that he should stop criticizing Olaf Scholz because I think it is unfair. Rutte said in an interview with the German news agency DPA, excerpted by Spiegel. Do you agree with these thoughts about Scholz?
I agree with Mr. Rutte, yeah, because this is very hypothetical comparison, but let's hypothetically to compare two different situations. On February 24th, then Russia started its full-scale aggression against Ukraine. In reality, we had Mr. Scholz as a Chancellor of Germany. But in theory, if we had Angela Merkel as a Chancellor of Germany, would we get more help or less help? I believe that less help. I believe that Angela Merkel, during all of her presidency, this is not presidency, cancellarity, something like that, yeah, she helped Ukraine less than Mr. Scholz. So obviously we have, and we also were very doubtful about Germany. When the war just started, we were doubtful if Germany will support help towards Ukraine, if Germany will support the sanctions against Russia, because Germany lost more than any other country in the world. From economic point of view, Germany, from these sanctions, after Russia, Russia lost more than any other country, but on the second place is Germany, who, after these sanctions, stopped a lot of business relationship with Russia, and a lot of supply chain just changed, and a lot of energy doesn't go to Germany from Russia. So Germany is really the closest friend now and closest ally of Ukraine, together with US, UK, Scandinavia, etc. But without German support, we couldn't get the European Union support. Because obviously Germany and France, they are two leaders of European Union. And Germany and France also support, and Italy, they started the process of joining Ukraine, joining European Union. This is also thanks to Mr. Scholz. And also, I don't believe that this criticism from Mr. Zelensky, I believe that this criticism is part of his job, of Mr. Zelensky's job, to criticize Western leaders for not enough support and for not enough supply of weapons, for example. Yeah, this is part of his job, and this is part of his tactic and strategy, and it somehow works. But on the last meeting in Kyiv, we saw Mr. Scholz and Mr. Zelensky on the common press conference, and I believe we are almost friends. As two persons, we understand one another very well. And we understand that, for example, Mr. Zelensky understands that this is Mr. Scholz's job not to supply us Taurus. And Mr. Scholz understands that this is Mr. Zelensky's job to ask again and again for Taurus. But I saw that this press conference was with very, very good spirits of friendship between not only Zelensky and Scholz, but also between Ukrainian and German nations.
Michael, really, as you said, Scholz rejected the idea of transferring towers to Ukraine as he considers it a mistake. But we launch our drones and rockets, and we see huge explosions on Russian territory. And Defense Intelligence of Ukraine has reported that a warehouse containing parts of Shaheds used by the Russian military to attack Ukraine has burned down in Russia and in Russian Special Economic Zone Alabuga. And it was reported by Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. The on Telegram, quote, there were 65 attack drone fuselage, as well as engines, navigation systems, thermal imaging cameras for the production of Shaheds 136 pieces in the room. Everything was burned. What the consequences would be, in your opinion? And if we talk not only about this situation, about these huge explosions, but also in general.
No, all of this huge explosion, this is only about 400 Shaheds, 400 units of Russian-Iranian drones. And they produce, in average, 100 per day. So this was the production of 4 days, just 4 days. So it doesn't mean that, okay, we saved our special forces, we saved some dozen of Ukrainian lives, who hypothetically were killed by these drones. But it doesn't change the way of war we have. I believe that more changed the way of war we have is last Ukrainian attacks on Russian cities and Russian oil refineries, because during just last weekend, we had more than 5 or 6 different attacks on very important points inside Russia. It was the biggest oil refinery in the region, in the border of Ukraine region, in Rostov. And this oil refinery just stopped working, absolutely stopped working. And exactly this refinery supplied Russian army and Russian tanks. So now we have long logistics because we should buy these from faraway refineries. Another explosion was in chemical manufacturing, which manufactures some parts for Russian missiles also. It was also a huge explosion. And I could count, and I believe that Ukraine now, let's say, at least balanced this drones war, and Russia sends towards Ukraine about 100 drones per day. But Ukraine also sends about 100 drones per day towards Russia. So now we are balanced on this war, which is a very important factor.
Michael, thank you for this conversation. As always, it was very interesting. Michael Sheitelman, a political strategist. Your dog is barking. Agree with us. Michael Sheitelman, a political strategist based in Kyiv, was with us today. We wish our audience all the best and see you.